how did you become one of the youngest ever managing directors in the history of Goldman Sachs at only, I think, 27 years old?
Okay, so you're going straight there. Now,
Exactly.
look, you asked me a question about something that happened well over 15 years ago, so my memory is probably a bit hazy. Look, I started at Goldman Sachs as an intern, as an analyst. I've been a lifer there. Now, look, I was young. I was quite junior. I was quite oblivious to this whole nominations process that happens around these types of promotions. We call it at Goldman Sachs cross-roughing. At the time, I didn't even know I was in the mix until one day my then boss, Guy Seddenberg, came over on the trading floor, shook my hand and said, "Congratulations, you're becoming a managing director." So there was never a plan. I was very fortunate, though, to have that, acceleration early on in my career. If I look back, I think there were a few things that probably helped me. I'd say number one is the culture of the place. Okay, as soon as I hit that trading floor as an intern, felt that intensity, it was quite addictive, right? But what I think was very true at Goldman Sachs then, it has always been a place that is meritocratic. It's not about how many grey hairs you have. It's not about who you know. It's been about what you bring. And that meant early on in my career, I could speak up. I could express opinions. I had access to some of the very senior partners. People like Ashok Varadan, who I still work with to this day, I knew as an analyst. And I felt empowered to be able to talk to him and tell him what I thought about the business or markets. And that helped me, of course, add value to the business, but get noticed. And that helps at a place like Goldman Sachs. Look, I'd say secondly, just really having access to some phenomenal people at the start of my career. So my first boss was a legend, Dris Ben Brahim. He hired me when I was an intern. I joined him as a trader on the rates desk at the time. But very early on, he then took over what became our global macro proprietary trading group. And it was this mythical group of prop traders. Now, this was obviously a different world, pre-financial crisis. But Dris took me under his wing. He really invested time teaching me. And he had views and ideas across every different asset class imaginable. But he gave me a book. He gave me control of what he was thinking and doing. And that really helped me learn a lot early on. And this wasn't your typical junior trader job because I was sitting there with a bunch of guys who were all in their 40s and 50s. It was in some ways the ultimate retirement gig. But I was lucky to be there as an analyst. And he really helped me. And look, I only worked with him in reality for 4 years out of my now 22 odd years at Goldman Sachs. But it was very formative. And he's still like a big brother mentor to me now. And look, then I'd say the third thing that helped with that career progression early on were just some choices I made and some risks I took early on in my career. As I mentioned, I ended up on a great desk early on. I was having fun. I was there on that prop desk from 2004 to 2007. But it was around that time when the firm was really thinking through, should we build a business in emerging markets? And from a fixed income context across the region in London, there wasn't much left in that space after the Russia default in the late 90s, but a few key people building that business up. And there was a point in 2007 where they asked me, look, do you want to take this jump over to join the franchise side of the business at Goldman Sachs, not just on the proprietary side? Pretty much everyone I asked at the time said, why would you do that? You've already got this great gig. But I kind of had this itch to actually join the business and not just be in this risk-taking, market-focused group that sat in the corner. And look, hit the ground running in 2007. We had some ups and downs over the financial crisis. But 3 years later in 2010, we started to really build up a strong presence in emerging markets. And I think that's what ultimately really helped me, reach that MD title quite early on.
And did you notice any change kind of before and after receiving that? Was there a notice, or was it just another day? The day after was just another day?
Look, for me, it was a surprise. I just kept my head down and kept working. Of course, the press loved it.
I read the articles.
There were a few of them. I tried to avoid all of that and stay low-key and just focus on, learning, growing the business. And look, for me, of course, it's nice to get that recognition. But again, what really sets you up to continue on that path is what you keep bringing day to day in the business there.